Patrick with Denali Racing and Performance. Today's quick little video is going to be about the engine block for SUV Denial. It is a 6.0 LS iron block. It came with an LS, so I don't think there's really an argument about putting an LS back in it. Originally had a 5.3 all aluminum for the Envoy. So here is, I purchased this block on Facebook Marketplace. It's already had a lot of machine work done to it. The person who had the project didn't have the funds or really, motivation to finish working on it. It works out pretty well because all the internal components we have will fit it. Yeah, it's on the ragged edge. Originally it's a 4-inch bore. This has been bored to 4-inch 80 thou. It's been half filled with concrete. It's been decked, a line hone for the mains. Everything checked out really well. I wound up doing a couple other different things, which I'll show you guys to make it typically what you probably should do if you have the engine already torn down, is kind of deburr and smooth out some of the passages and get rid of some of the scale and everything else in the engine here, in the block. I'll show you guys exactly what I did and kind of my, theory behind it or approach. I am no engine builder by any means. I don't even think I'm even qualified to be standing next to this engine block, but I kind of have a friend who is pretty good at it and who does racing heads for a pretty prominent engine builder. And I kind of just bounce things off of him. If it's not like a hard no, then I kind of research it a little more. But to kind of go in here and clean up the areas for the stress risers and smooth out oiling. The biggest thing of just going in and deburring this block is because it's going to see significant stress regardless. So having all those high stress areas in the casting, if it starts to twist and stretch, it could knock one of those off, and big enough or small enough, whatever, is going to get into the pickup or really damage your motor. So it's real important to kind of clean all that stuff off. Some of the casting flash is kind of loose as well. You'd be surprised in some areas inside the crank area. It's pretty loose. So definitely getting some of the casting flash and some of the really nasty areas in here to get them cleaned out is a benefit. Oiling on an LS is a problem. Mainline oiling. All right, so if you don't know how the oiling works, I'm going to make it pretty simple, down and dirty on an LS. Comes from an oil pump, which is driven off the crank, runs along this kind of main channel bore, along the bottom of the cylinders, driver's side, comes up. If you know that barbell that's in the back here, okay, what it does is the barbell diverts the oil to the oil filter, comes right back in, past the barbell again, comes up, and it feeds the main, or this kind of main galley for the lifters. It jumps over because of the plates or the front plate, but the rear cover has this kind of larger opening in it to pass oil from the driver's side to the passenger side lifter galley. The front just has a basic plate with a impregnated O-ring in there. If you are reusing this, the rule of thumb is make sure you can still feel it raised above the metal. So these LSs have oil problems. So what kind of my theory is, and again, I'm not an engine builder, it's going through this oil galley first, feeding the lifters, and then going to the push rods. And then all that back pressure is allowing the oil to go to the cam journal and to the mains and then to the rods, and then back into the crankcase. Some of the things you can do is get oil restricted push rods for the LS. You don't need a tremendous amount of oil in the valve train. What's nice about this is that the lifters are always kind of soaked in oil, but still it just sends a tremendous amount of oil up into the top of the head under the valve cover. So it does zero help for you. You only need so many ounces of oil per rocker arm assembly to keep it together and keep it efficient. So on dart blocks, I think the LSX block is priority main oiling. So it has its own channel, own galley sending oil right to the mains. So there really isn't any issue. Here you can't do that. There really isn't any effective way to do that on this. What I have done, and I've only seen once, and they've actually done it on a priority main oiling block anyway, LS based. I think it was an LSX block. And there really is zero information out on this stuff. What I wound up doing is tapping the passenger side lifter galley ports, front and rear, okay? The only thing they do, they're the same size as the driver's side, same bore. I think it's like 550 thou, so actually, no, it's bigger. It's probably 580 thou. It's bigger than a 9/16 drill bit. So it is bigger than a 9/16 drill bit just by a little bit. So you need a 9/16 drill bit to tap a 3/8 pipe plug. So that's what I did. I did the front and the rear. And my thought is I have two 3/8 pipe plugs, Allen head, socket head. One of them here is actually a 3/16 hole. And one of them here is an 090 hole. So half. Now again, this is my theory. What I'm going to be doing, also in this video, you're going to see kind of a quick time lapse of me tapping the block and kind of getting it ready and making a little fixture to hold these, drill the hole in them. I'm going to put the larger plug in the rear and the smaller hole plug in the front. Now what I've done is I had to tap these pretty deep, and you'll see if you use a big 1/2-inch ratchet. I had to tap these pretty deep to get it. I want it to sit flush regardless, especially in the front cover since it's flat. And I'll swing the motor around in a minute, the block around so you can see the front. So that's kind of my first approach. I want to limit oil from this galley because it really only needs oil for the lifter and for the push rods. Even though we're not limiting this side, so we're going to get a lot of oil on the push rods on this side, both sides are still going to get restricted push rods. So kind of oil restrictors, what it's going to be for the push rods, in the push rods. It's just a smaller diameter. I am going to kind of test that theory with that size of push rod. So in doing so, I'm now limiting the oil here because we don't need a whole lot. It's still going to be able to fill plenty and exit plenty. So we're considerably smaller. My thought also too is this back portion is going to get the most flow. The front is very limited on size, with a little channel milled in the block on this LS. Very limited in size. I don't want to completely block it off. I thought about doing that, just putting a blank plug in there and just having it fill. But I wanted to make sure that I kind of kept with how the engineers at GM wanted it to work. So my thought is, this hole being bigger because it's closer to the oil feed, it will jump over, but if more oil is being able to flow in this way and less in this way, it's still going to balance out, still going to have the flow efficiency of going around, but not allowing too much to come this way, bypassing the main or this side lifter galley. So let me swing this around. What I'm actually going to do is take the camera off. I'll bring the camera in and show you what I'm doing to the top of the block there. Okay, so inside the lifter valley there, you can see I polished and made it a real smooth ramp on this side here because oil's coming out of the head. Now, there's a dam right here. So here on this side, I had to smooth it pretty good. Sorry, it's a terrible. Let me spin it. So there I had to smooth and blend that hole, that bore right there. That's an oil drain. So the oil had a better chance of kind of just slipping down into it. I did the same for this one, and on this side it has the much bigger opening for the drain back. The problem also with these is windage. So what I wound up doing is, these holes probably not as necessary as a 1/2-inch drill bit. If you know a dart block or LSX block, there's nothing here. It's a big window, so you can access the lifters without taking the heads off. So I drilled holes in there to kind of help windage. As oil's falling down, it'll still have some windage as air is trying to come past. And also in the middle, so if you look, you know, right in the middle of these, there's this little hump here, that's the oil drain right there. So that's kind of a little casting hump. Right in the middle is the center cam bearing underneath this cast part here. Drilling a hole in the middle allows you to get a little more windage or air movement inside the channel in between these cylinders right in here. And the same for these ones here, because there is nothing there besides a small hole in the block, you know, as they run all the way through the middle of the block. Well, oil's kind of getting flown around there, and there's a lot of crank movement, so we want to be able to do that. So now, as I put my top cover on, I'm going to have a breather hose going to my puke tank for this as well. This being an LQ4 Vortec cam sensor, I'm not using this. You could also use that as kind of windage or breather. We're just going to block that off with the cover. Because it really doesn't do anything. It's just a small hole going down there. Also coming to the back here, which again, really doesn't do anything. Also kind of blending in, getting rid of all of this, you know, casting marks, all that casting flash, all that stress risers and sharp areas in there. I deburred every little area I could and really blended them in. There was a lot of pieces that kind of just fell off as I was going, kind of burring, you know, using a burr and cleaning this out. There's kind of like a little valley in here, so I kind of smoothed that out. And again, the idea is, if you have a sharp corner, can create a crack or a high stress area, which can crack and fail. So you want to eliminate them as much as possible. So I'm going to flip, you can see too, just kind of cleaning all these areas up. Not a whole lot of oil obviously goes in this area, but some. So if it does, you're going to get a lot of oil thrown off the timing chain here. So you want to have everything kind of bleed back and be nice and clean. And you want to keep as much oil as you can in the pan, because again, these things are terrible for oiling. So let me roll the motor over. And again, just deburred everything here. You can see the plug there. It actually does sit flush. I'm not going to crank it all the way down. Same with the front one. It will sit all the way flush inside to the back part of the casting there. And again, just kind of deburred every area, every little sharp edge. All right, let me roll the motor over. All right, same thing applies here. You can now see those half-inch holes I drilled in right in the middle of the center of the cam bearing over the thrust for the main. Kind of got rid of as much as the high stress areas I could. Cleaned everything up really well. Again, just knocked down any of those stress risers in the block, in here. Again, all through the casting ventilation that GM puts in here. This being a marketplace block, you can see a little bit of staining. You can't feel it with your finger. I'm not going to touch it. The hone looks great, looks clean. I'll let the rings do that. Not to discount a quality engine build all this work. It's just not enough. I need to make this thing last. That's not going to be a factor for this. Yeah, they are going to be file fit rings and whatever, but again, you can barely feel it. It's just staining. You cannot feel it with your finger. I think this motor sat for about a year without anybody really doing anything to it. So I had it through wash tank. It's going to go through one more wash tank before I start to assemble it. I got a couple of things I'm waiting on. And again, if you don't know, you can see where the oiling is coming. And they just kind of cut through the main, or through the cam tunnel here, where the cam bearing would be. So that oil comes from the galley here, straight through, straight up to the main. So there's another theory too about cam bearing clearance. Apparently to run them a little on the tighter side so that you get just enough oil on the cam bearing, and then it's not allowing oil to be let go through the cam bearing. Too much oil being let go through the cam bearing. It's kind of being restricted by the tolerance. This is what I heard, I don't know. Allowing more oil to be fed to the main. And then to the rod. So, but yeah, everything is cleaned up as best as I can. Any stress risers, a lot of it in there. A lot of stuff up in here on under the pan rail here. So hopefully we did it enough to where it might hold up a little bit longer than what you typically see. And again, I don't know if this is going to work. Everything here is going to be pretty much experimental because I don't know enough. Again, I'm not an engine builder. I can only use the internet to tell me what to do. But I am a machinist, by trade, a CNC machinist. I just don't work on engines. I do aerospace stuff. All right, so again, I don't know if this stuff is going to work. Well, just in particular, the restricting the oil on the passenger side, because again, it baffles me. I guess it makes sense, or no, it doesn't make sense, but I guess for ease, but that much oil to the lifters on the passenger side and on the driver's side here, whatever. I don't know. But it makes sense to me to kind of limit the passenger side to help keep more oil on the driver's side, to help keep more oil available for the crankshaft, the main bearings and the rod bearings. So also this windage thing, I don't see how it could hurt. It's a turbo race motor that we'll see some street, but it's not anywhere near daily or a street car. More just a drag and drive. Hopefully 1500 horsepower drag and drive twin turbo SUV, all-wheel drive SUV. So that's pretty much it. So that's the update for the engine. It's pretty much almost ready to go. I have to get the crank balanced, and that's it. It's pretty much, crank's pretty much ready to go. You've seen the crank in the other video. I'll put a card for that, modifying that. And then I can start getting this together, and hopefully pretty soon have a short block, and then not too much longer after that have a long block. So thanks for watching, everybody. Like, comment, share. Please consider subscribing. We'll see you, hopefully more updates with this soon. Thanks.